Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivare Hari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivare Hari. Yasura Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yasura Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivare Hari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivare Hari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivare Hari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivare Hari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayom Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Sthala Satashi Shrimad Savangre Sisi Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Shiru Prabhupada Ki Jayom Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Sthala Satashi Shrimad Savangre Shiru Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Ananta Kota Vaishnavindra Ki ISKCON Founder Acharya Savangre Shiru Prabhupada Ki Namacharya Shil Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakti Vrinda Ki Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Vrindavan Dham Ki Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki Ganga Mayi Ki Yamuna Mayi Ki Tulsi Devi Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Sankirtan Yagya Ki Harinam Sankirtan Ki Grantaraj Shrimad Bhagavatam Ki Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda Ki Go Premananda. All glory is to the assembled devotees. All glory is to the assembled devotees. Glory is to the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru, Shri Guru. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shrimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 1, Text 18. Sorry, can't see. Buddheshu Punya Upavana Adri Kunjeshu Apanka Toyeshu Sarit Sarasu Anantalingai Samalankiteshu Chachara Tirtha Ayataneshu Ananya Pureshu Punyo Pavanadri Kunjeshu Apankatoyeshu Sarit Sarasu Anantalingai Samalankriteshu Chacharata Tirtha Yataneshvananya Pureshu Punyo Pavanaji Kunjeshu Apankatoyeshu Sarit Sarasu Anantalingai Samalankriteshu Chacharatita Yataneshvananya Pureshu Punyo Pavanaji Kunjeshu Apankatoyeshu Sarit Sarasu Anantalingai Samalankriteshu Chacharatirtha Yataneshvananya Ladies? Pureshu, holy places like Ayodhya, Dwarka, and Mathura. Punya, piety. Upavana, the air. Adri, hill. Kunjeshu, in the orchards. Apanka, without sin. Toyeshu, in the water. Sarit, river. Sarasu, lakes. Anantalingai, the forms of the unlimited. Samalankriteshu, being so decorated. Chachara, executed. Tirtha, places of pilgrimage. Ayataneshu, holy lands. Ananya, alone, or seeing Krishna alone. Translation. He began to travel alone, thinking only of Krishna, through various holy places like Ayodhya, Dwarka, and Mathura. He traveled where the air, hill, orchard, river, and lake are all pure and sinless, and where the forms of the unlimited decorate the temples. Thus he performed the pilgrim's progress. Oh, I'm waiting for someone to translate it. Sorry. I'm so used to being in a Russian translated environment that I'm waiting for somebody to translate the verse. Hare Krishna. Purport. These acha forms of the Lord may be considered idols by the atheists, but that does not matter for persons like Vidura or his many other servants. The forms of the Lord are mentioned here as Ananta Linga. Such forms of the Lord have unlimited potency, the same as that of the Lord himself. There is no difference between the potencies of the acha and those of the personal forms of the Lord. The example of the post box and post office may be applied here. The little post boxes distributed all over the city have the same potency as the postal system in general. The duty of the post office is to carry letters from one place to another. If one puts letters in post boxes authorized by the General Post Office, the function of carrying letters is performed without a doubt. Similarly, the Achamurti can also deliver the same unlimited potency of the Lord as when he is personally present. Vidura therefore could see nothing but Krishna in the different acha forms, and ultimately he was able to realize Krishna alone and nothing else. Omagyanatimarandasya gananjana salakaya chakshu unminitam yena tasmai shri gurave namaha ukam kadoti vachalam bhangam nangayate girim yat kripa tamaham bande shri gunundina tarunam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaudavani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shanyavadi Paschacha Desatarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gauda Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This verse is about Vidura. After he began his travels on places of pilgrimage. As previously described, he quit his brother's palace after receiving insult from Duryodhana. He accepted it as the workings of the divine energy of the Lord, and therefore he chose to take advantage of his disconnection with the palace and all of its intrigues, to go to various places of pilgrimage alone, and thereby throughout the course of his travels come in contact with Krishna wherever he went. In fact, it is stated here at the end of the purport, Vidura therefore could see nothing but Krishna in the different archetypal forms, and ultimately he was able to realize Krishna alone and nothing else. When I was reading this, I was thinking about who is Vidura, and what benefits does he obtain from his visiting these various places of pilgrimage. Vidura, as of course, in fact, we heard it the other day, Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavatam class in the Samadhi Mandir. Prabhupada talked about Vidura and how he had been Yamaraj, previously Yamaraj, who was cursed by Manduk Muni, who felt very alarmed by the fact that Yamaraj would bestow such a serious punishment to him for what he considered to be a small activity of piercing an ant with a straw when he was a child. And he found himself arrested and taken with the other criminals at that place, and he was about to be lanced as a punishment. And when he determined that it was Yamaraj who had meted out this punishment to him, he decided that he would curse him and to take birth as a Sudra. And of course, Vidura accepted the curse, and Yamaraj accepted the curse as Vidura, and he had to take birth for 100 years. Of course, because he was such a great devotee of the Lord, he was able to see Krishna manifest wherever he went, because it's described he was a pure devotee of the Lord. But nonetheless, Vidura, he went to these different places of pilgrimage, saw Krishna manifest everywhere, traveled alone, and it describes here as he performed the Pilgrim's Progress. When I think of Pilgrim's Progress, I think about the knowledge that's attained through the course of one's travels, which is essentially what Pilgrim's Progress is all about. Of course, there are different ways to see this. When I think of traveling alone, going to various places alone, I think about the inconveniences and difficulties there are in the course of my travels. I have to think about security checks, about airline flights, and it's a very purifying experience. And I try to understand what knowledge do I gain by all of this travel. But of course, the knowledge that's gained is what Vidura gained, is that he renounced his connection with everything, traveled alone, and he went specifically for the purpose of his own self-purification. In fact, it's described that he felt so contaminated by the association of Diyodhana, Dhritarashtra, Shakuni, that before going to see Krishna, he thought maybe he should purify himself. And therefore, that was his purpose for traveling to these various places of pilgrimages, for self-purification. But it's interesting, I was looking at some of the purports about Vidura and some of the commentaries in various places about his connection with being Yamaraj. And previously in the first canto of the Shrimad Bhagavatam, it's described that when Vidura gave up his life, he didn't go in the same place where the Pandavas went. The Pandavas, they are eternal associates of the Lord. And as we know, as described in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, when the Pandavas, when Yudhishthira Maharaj and the Pandavas were perceiving that the Kali Yuga seemed to be approaching, and after the battle of Kurukshetra, then Yudhishthira Maharaj prepared himself by withdrawing himself completely from his worldly connections, so-called worldly connections. He was a great devotee of Krishna. And he began traveling to that place and in preparation to leave this world. When his brothers Arjuna and Bhima, Nakula, Sahadev, they also saw that Yudhisthira was preparing to leave, then they also followed the same path that he followed. When Draupadi realized that the Pandavas were her husband, were leaving and were not thinking about her, she also had to take into consideration about what she was going to do, and she also accepted the same course and prepared to leave this world. Why? Because they are all eternal associates of the Lord. And being eternal associates of the Lord, they have an eternal service and they also have their place of residence. Just like in the Brihad Bhagavatam, it is described in the story about Gopakumar, and then when Uttara was inquiring from Parikshit Maharaj, she wanted to know the various destinations where the devotees of the Lord achieve. And she thought that various destinations are there is a certain hierarchy, but there must be a special place for those devotees who have the special relationship with Krishna, which is not experienced by any of these other devotees in these various abodes. And Sanatana Goswami, and in the commentary describes that these different types of devotees are the Jnana Bhaktas, and the example that was given of the Jnana Bhakta was Rishabdev. Then there's the Shuddha Bhaktas, and the example given of the Shuddha Bhakta was Ambarish Maharaj. Then there's the Prema Bhaktas. The Prema Bhaktas, the example was given of him of Hanuman. And then there was Prema Para Bhaktas. The Prema Para Bhaktas where the example was given of Arjuna and his brothers, the Pandavas. And then there's the Prematura Bhaktas, the highest Bhaktas. Those devotees who actually feel suffering and pain, the greatest pain in their ecstatic love of the Lord, and they're devotees such as Uddhava and the Yadavas. And all of these devotees are described for this purpose, to show that they have a particular place, a particular abode, particular residence where they go, where they're eternally associated with the Lord, and sometimes they come and they assist the Lord in his pastimes, but when he winds up his pastimes, these associates of the Lord leave this world, prepare themselves to leave this world, and they go, of course, they go to the next destination, or in some cases, there's a whole other story which is explained about how the devotees appear. They come, they're eternally associates in the spiritual world, but also some of them come in the form of demigods, and they come and they take birth as the Yadus, when Krishna asks the demigods to take their birth. So Yamaraj is a demigod. And it's actually specifically described by Srila Prabhupada and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, what his destination, Vidura's destination, while on pilgrimage, he left his body at Prabhas. Of course, first he came back to Hastinapur. He was received by all the devotees who were feeling great separation from him and missing him very much. But while he was on pilgrimage, he traveled to all these different places, and then he met Uddhava. He met Uddhava on the banks of the Yamuna River. And there, when he met Uddhava gave him some instructions and also told him to go and to hear from Maitreya Rishi. And because Vidura understood that from this statement from Uddhava, and also he understood that the Lord had given instructions to Uddhava and also had given to Maitreya, who was nearby. And Sridhar Swami in his commentary explains that the Lord directly instructed Maitreya to go and to instruct Vidura. And of course, when Vidura heard this, then immediately he became overwhelmed and began crying with feelings of intense ecstatic love, because he understood that the Lord, just prior to his departure from this world, was remembering him was thinking of him, and tears began manifesting in his eyes, and Prabhupada states in the commentary that this is something that every devotee should hanker for, these kinds of tears, and which are symptoms of one's love for the Lord. So Vidura had this kind of love for the Lord, yet it's described he didn't achieve the same destination as the Pandavas. And Prabhupada explains this, and also Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains it in the verse, that after Vidura had instructed Dhritarashtra, after Dhritarashtra left home, and when the Pandavas were leaving Vidura, he went on pilgrimage again and left his body at Prabhas, because he was absorbed in thought of Lord Krishna. As this verse described, how he was absorbed. He was absorbed in thought of Lord Krishna because he learned how to see Krishna everywhere, and in every place he went. And whatever deity he saw, whether he was in Ayodhya, or whether he was in Dwarka, whether he was in Mathura, wherever he visited in the various places of pilgrimage, because his Ishtadev was fixed in his heart, he saw only Krishna everywhere. And that's what's explained in the verse. But although he saw Krishna everywhere, then it states in this purport, in the verse, Vidura, while on pilgrimage, left his body at Prabhas. Because he was absorbed in thought of Lord Krishna, he was received by the denizens of Pitraloka, where he returned to his original post. Different destination than the Pandavas. He had to go back to his post, his original post, because he was cursed to take birth for 100 years, and of course, assist the Lord. And then, in the purport, Prabhupada says, the difference between the Pandavas and Vidura is that the Pandavas are eternal associates of the Lord, the personality of Godhead, whereas Vidura is one of the administrative demigods in charge of the Pitraloka planet and is known as Yamaraj. And another verse, something which may seem to be very contradictory. This is a verse, I'm sorry, I don't have the reference where it's from, but it's the Bhagavatam. Let me find it. Yes. You are recognized by the Lord Bhavan Bhagavato Nityam Samata Sanugasyaha Yasya Gyanopadeshaya Madhisad Bhagavan Rajan. You are recognized by the Lord eternally. When the Lord departed to Vaikuntha, he instructed me to teach knowledge to you, his devotee. And in the commentary it states, you are not only a devotee having a post as Yamaraj, but you are an eternal associate of the Lord in another form. In another form. In other words, there's the post Yamaraj. There's the post that, of course, who was it? Aryama, who took that post over while Vidura had descended to accept his curse. And Yamaraj is a post. But in this commentary by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says, you are not only a devotee having a post as Yamaraj, but you are also an eternal associate of the Lord in another form. In other words, whoever it was who accepted the post of Yamaraj was a devotee in another form. And more evidence about Yamaraj being a designated post is given in a quote from the Nisringa Purana and Vishnu Purana. This verse states, just to benefit the conditioned souls, Brahma, who was born on the universal lotus flower and who was adored by all classes of men, appointed me This is Yamaraj speaking. Appointed me to the post of Yamaraj long ago. Of course, we don't know who it was who was speaking. Posted me to the post of Yamaraj long ago. It doesn't say who it was. But whoever it was is an eternal associate of the Lord, as evidenced by the commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So that I could engage myself in awarding everyone the results of their fruitive activities. I punish those who are averse to the lotus feet of Lord Hari, the spiritual master of everyone, and I offer my respectful obeisances unto those who have surrendered at his lotus feet. So, this is a little bit about Yamaraj. It's very little about the personality who accepted the post of Yamaraj, except he was an eternal associate of the Lord. But as described in this verse today, that Yamaraj achieved, that we just read, Yamaraj achieved by his constant remembrance of Lord Krishna, he achieved the opportunity to return to his post as one of the 12 Mahajans, Yamaraj, and that's where he went after giving up his body. Pandavas, they returned in their same body, but Vidura gave up his body and returned to his post. I wanted to bring up another point, although it probably won't be so much time to cover it in just full justification. But I was thinking about it. It was interesting to note that Vidura, wherever he went, he saw Krishna. Krishna was the object of his meditation. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, for one who sees me everywhere, sees everything in me, I am never lost to him, nor is he ever lost to me. And wherever he went in the various places of pilgrimage, he only saw his worshipful deity, Krishna. Even going to Ayodhya and going to Dwarka and going to Mathura. And it made me think of another pilgrim and the progress he had in visiting these same places. And that is, of course, Gopakumara. He had his pilgrim's progress, and he had his meditation. But his meditation, and he also had the object of his Ishtadev, which was, of course, Madan Gopal, which was the personality who was gradually revealed to him within his heart through the course of his various travels. And he also had certain knowledge which he obtained wherever he traveled after receiving that mantra from his spiritual master Jayanta. We know that Gopakumara is described in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. He became attracted to one great Vaishnava who seemed to be absorbed in ecstatic trance, and he began rendering some service to him and bringing him some milk. And this great exalted Vaishnava became so pleased in Govardhan by the service rendered by this cowherd boy that he said that if you prepare yourself, go take bath, come, I will give you a mantra which you can chant on, which is the mercy of the Lord of the universe. That's how he described it. It's the mercy of the Lord of the universe, and I want you to accept this mantra. So Gopakumara, he accepted the request of this Vaishnava. He took his bath, and then the Vaishnava, whose name was Jayanta, he gave him this mantra and told him that he should faithfully chant this mantra. Later he gave him the blessing. He said, may you live a very, very long time. May you always keep the body of a cowherd boy. And may you always develop the mentality of achieving the fruit that which the mantra has to offer for you. That was the blessing that his spiritual master gave him. So Gopakumara had the unique opportunity of traveling to various places of pilgrimage with this blessing and benediction which he had received from his spiritual master. He didn't exactly know who he was looking for. It's described in Brihad Bhagavatamrita that he was a naive cowherd boy, and wherever he went, he just accepted wherever he wandered to, he just accepted that he was given an opportunity to see the Lord of the universe. And even his first encounter was with a Shalagram Shila, which was worshipped by one pure Brahmana. And after seeing the Shalagram Shila, then and seeing that the Brahman, how the Brahmana was worshipping him, then he was thinking, this must be the Lord of the universe that my spiritual master told me who I'm looking for. That's who he was looking for. He didn't know who it was. He was just looking for that Lord of the universe whose mercy he would attain by the grace of the instructions of his spiritual masters. So his first impression, even of the Shalagam Shila, was, this is the Lord that I'm looking for. But when he saw that the Brahmana took the Shila and didn't feed him and put him in a box, he became very discouraged, thinking, this is not a very appropriate way to treat the Lord of the universe. He must be hungry, and you've put him in a box, and you haven't even fed him yet. So immediately, within his heart, he was feeling something was lacking. And that lacking was in his heart, became this pilgrim's progress. It became this pilgrim's progress because wherever he went, while faithfully chanting that mantra, gradually, by the blessings of his spiritual master, by the instructions of great Vaishnavas that he met along the way, by the mercy of Lord Shiva, who gave him instructions along the way, by the mercy of Narada Muni, by the mercy of the Lord himself, who he came into contact at various places in his dealings with the Lord, by the mercy of Uddhava, who he later met in Dwarka, he's receiving both within his heart and externally from those who are instructing spiritual masters and by the Lord himself, that wherever he went, there was something lacking that was within, manifesting in his heart because of his faithful chanting of that mantra. As we know, after seeing the Brahmin told him if you're disappointed with what you see was happening with my worship of the Shila, putting him in the box, then you should go to some place where the Lord is worshipped in great opulence, where there are all kinds of festivals, and then where he is fed very nicely, regularly, getting regulated offerings. So then Gopakumar decided to take those instructions to heart, received those instructions, and then decided to go to this place where Lord Vishnu was worshipped. But then he saw certain things in the worship of Lord Vishnu, and not only did he see certain things, but he was also entrusted to become the king. Was it the king? Yes, he became the king when his son died. And he was entrusted to become the king and to engage in all kinds of service. But when he saw how the prasadam was not properly respected, he became very disturbed by that. And he began contemplating about, where can I go to a place where the proper respect is given to the Lord's prasadam? And then some pilgrims came and instructed him to go to Jagannath Puri, where he could see that the prasadam was properly instructed, was properly respected and distributed, and great opulence. So something was happening. He was gaining some knowledge in his pilgrim's progress. He was gaining some knowledge both from the faithful chanting of his mantra, and also from going to these various places which are described here in today's verse and described elaborately in Brihad Bhagavatamrita. That wherever the deities are worshipped, these deities are the Lord himself. And the Lord manifests himself in these various forms. Through his multifarious potencies, he is situated not only in this world, but in the upper planetary systems, in the Vaikuntha planets, and in the places beyond. They are all non-different, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's manifest himself to reciprocate with the worshippers of those places where the devotees serve him in a particular mood. So each time Gopakumar visited a place, after Jagannath Puri, he went back to Mathura. Then after Mathura, he was told about the existence of Svargaloka, and he said, "Oh, you think this is a nice place, and you should go to Svargaloka." And because he had the blessings that he could go wherever the power of that mantra took him, then immediately a spaceship came and took him to Svargaloka, and he saw the Lord, how he's worshipped there. He saw Indra, how he was worshipping. He saw the demigods, how they were offering sacrifices to the Lord. Then Indra, he had to flee because he had committed some offense, and he had to flee, and everyone decided that Gopakumara seemed to be a fit candidate. He should replace Indra in Svargaloka. His journey, his pilgrim's progress, his journey was very, very elaborate. But wherever he went, because of his faithful chanting of his mantra, and because of remembering the instructions he received, wherever he went, he was always feeling some lack, something not there, some intimacy that he was looking for, that he was expecting or hoping to achieve by the various places he went. Even when he went to, where was it? Tapaloka. When he went to Tapaloka and he arrived in Tapaloka, he saw everybody, and they were all experiencing relationships with the Lord. But their relationships with the Lord were within their heart. They would sit and they would be absorbed in meditation, and they didn't have to be conscious of the Lord externally. They were conscious of the Lord internally. And there, Gopakumara would approach them to find out where he was and where the Lord was. But every time he approached somebody, they were just too absorbed in meditation. They didn't even acknowledge his presence because they were fixed in their meditation on the Lord. They had their relationship, but that was their relationship, and the Lord was reciprocating with them according to their mood. Then Pipalayana Rishi came, and he instructed Gopakumara, and he began telling him about what these residents are experiencing. He tried to suggest, why don't you try it? Everybody else is doing it here. Why don't you try to experience the Lord by meditating on the Lord in the heart? But Gopakumara didn't have that inclination. He was not so inclined. He was looking for a particular personal relationship with the Lord. So much so, even when he went to Vaikuntha, as we know, in Vaikuntha, he also became very disappointed, disenchanted, when he first saw the Lord in Vaikuntha, and he saw him sitting on his throne, and he threw out his arms, and he called out the name, Gopal! Gopal! And all the residents of Vaikuntha, they were saying, who's he talking about? It's Gopal. You should glorify the Lord in a different way. The Lord here is not glorified by the name Gopal. Gopal is simply some temporary form that the Lord, when he descended into the world, he accepted to cheat Kamsa. But actually, a better glorification of the Lord here is to recognize him as the emperor. He's the emperor. He's the king of all kings. And he descends Paratranaya Sarunam Vinashya Chaduskritam, in order to deliver the pious, annihilate the miscreants. So the residents of Vaikuntha, they began chastising him because he was looking for Gopal. And yet, because he was in a place where everybody else was fully satisfied with the Lord, how the Lord was manifesting himself to them, they couldn't understand, who is this unusual character here calling out the name of Gopal in Vaikuntha? Unusual. Some corrected him, some pacified him, although it's brought out in the pages of Brihad Bhagavatamrita that one thing that exists in Vaikuntha is that there's no envy. There's no envy. Everyone is satisfied, and everyone was thinking that they were instructing Gopakumara because they were thinking, he should get the same bliss we get. They weren't thinking, no, we're getting so much bliss, he should get the same bliss that we're getting. But Gopakumara couldn't experience that. He was in the course, he was experiencing his pilgrim's progress. He went gradually when he is instructed by Narada Muni, and when Narada Muni told him, he said, one thing about you, I noticed, Gopakumar, here you are in the spiritual world where everyone is always full of bliss. It's Vaikuntha. Vaikuntha means a place where there's no anxiety. But I see you're in anxiety. That's not a place for anxiety. There's no anxiety. Look at everyone else. There's no anxiety here. I see your anxiety. There must be something. But Narada Muni could recognize what that something was. That something was his meditation. Gradually he began to experience in his heart, by the faithful chanting of that mantra, he began experiencing Madan Gopal. And wherever he went, even in Vaikuntha, when he was in Vaikuntha, he temporarily saw Krishna. He saw cowherd boys. He saw gopis. The Lord actually was very merciful and revealed some of this to him, to Gopakumar. But then he saw how the Lord was dealing with everyone else. And he couldn't keep it. He couldn't sustain that constant vision of Krishna. And Narada Muni perceived this and said that you don't belong here. You should go to the next place. And what was the next place? Ayodhya. Next place was Ayodhya. So, and then, I knew I was going to run out of time. But anyways, there's one verse, why he was sent to Ayodhya. I'm going to read that. Because there's a verse that Narada Muni told Gopakumar. One should follow whatever path leads to attaining one's own worshipable deity. That is the most intelligent way to act. Persons exclusively devoted to their object of worship should be very much attracted to anything in which they find even a faint scent, of their deity's presence. Commentary. Gopakumar might hesitate to approach Lord Ramachandra. He might think, well, why are you sending me to... Nonetheless, he gave him the names to call out of Lord Ramachandra. He said, you call out these names in ecstasy, and when you leave this place... And of course, Gopakumar was thinking, how can I leave this place? I have to get permission first from Vaikuntanath. And Narada Muni said, don't worry, Vaikuntanath already knows what you're thinking of doing and where you're going. He sent me to give you his permission. Don't worry. You have his permission to go there. So Gopakumar might hesitate to approach Lord Ramachandra. After all, Shrimad and Gopal Dev has long ago stolen Gopakumar's heart. And Gopakumar has since then lost interest in everything and everyone else. So how can he now be expected to develop love for someone else? Narada clears this potential doubt by assuring him that approaching Lord Ramachandra is the wisest thing he can do for his own self-interest. Hare Krishna. That's right, there's another program. There's another program supposed to start at 9 o'clock for Gopastami, where there's going to be a lecture about Gopastami, so I shouldn't. Of course, one thing I was going to say is that when Gopakumar saw everywhere, he saw Madan Gopal. And even when he approached him, he called out his name, Gopal. He didn't call out Vatsapal. He called out Gopal. So, Vatsapal means where's the cowherd boy herding the calves. His Gopal is cowherd boy herding the cows. So, anyways, let me finish this commentary. So how can he be expected to develop love for someone else? Narada clears this potential doubt by assuring him that approaching Lord Ramachandra is the wisest thing he can do for his own self-interest. He should follow the logic Svarkarayam Udaret pragya karya dhangsena morkata. An intelligent person should somehow do the needful. One who spoils the business at hand is a fool. Gopakumar should therefore approach his destination by stages, going first to Ayodhya, then to Dwarka, where he will meet his worshipable Lord. Gopakumar will achieve Lord Gopal Dev by the special mercy of the Supreme Lord in his form of Sri Raghunath, just as he achieved Lord Vishnu by the special mercy of Lord Shiva. In other words, by the mercy of Lord Ramachandra, he'll go to that place, and when he goes to Ayodhya, he starts feeling a little dissatisfaction, and Hanuman, observing his dissatisfaction, Hanuman is always chanting the glories of Lord Ram. So Hanuman was thinking, I should try to somehow placate this cowherd boy who's feeling some dissatisfaction. If he hears the glories of Ram from my mouth, certainly this will placate him and he'll want to stay. He won't be dissatisfied in this place. So Hanuman, thinking in this way, began chanting the glories of Ram. But then when Lord Ramachandra saw him, Lord Ramachandra seeing that Gopakumar, because he was still meditating on his worshipful deity, even Ayodhya, when he was in the presence of Lord Ramachandra, Gopakumar was still feeling some dissatisfaction. So Lord Ramachandra in Ayodhya said, you should go to Dwarka. You got direct instructions. You should go to Dwarka. He got blessings to move on. He got the intensification of his feelings of separation of Madan Gopal. Wherever he went, his dissatisfaction internal that he was experiencing, it began intensifying more and more, and of course, and then he went to Dwarka. Dwarka, more pastimes took place there. And then after Dwarka, where he felt also that he was not sufficiently having the kind of intimate relationship he was thinking. It's very nice, Krishna, he was rendering service to Krishna in Dwarka. He said, but when he meditates on Gopal, Madan Gopal within his heart, he's experiencing something very much more intimate than what he's experiencing here. And he even experiences Krishna embracing him and kissing him and becoming embarrassed by the kissing. This is what he experiences within his heart. So then Narada Muni again perceived Gopakumar's dissatisfaction even in Dwarka, and therefore he brought him to Uddhava's home, and between Narada Muni and Uddhava, they began instructing him and telling him, you should go to Mathura. Mathura where? They told him to descend back to Mathura in this world. And I'm going to read something. I'll take the extra time. I'll take extra time just to read something in this connection of what he experienced in Mathura. Okay, it's so... I'm going to read some verses. After leaving Dwarka, he descended to Mathura, and then following Narada's instructions, here in Braj, he says, he's speaking to the Mathura Brahmin, I went to see the many places of Sri Krishna's pastimes. I sang his names, most dear to me. I sang about his pastimes loudly and sweetly. I focused my mind upon them, and they attained such a state of ecstasy, it became so emotional that it embarrasses me to even think of it. How then can I describe this to anyone else? I spent my days and nights in great distress, always crying in a pitiful voice, not knowing whether the practice I had so long been following would lead me to happiness or cast me into the ocean of distress. This is what Gopakumar, of course, his distress was feelings of separation. And these feelings of separation, of course, were very intensifying within his heart wherever he was going. Externally, it appeared to be like dissatisfaction. And to others, it appears to be like dissatisfaction. But actually, for Gopakumar, it was the highest feelings of ecstasy, these feelings of separation. And in such feelings of separation, it's difficult to ascertain. What am I experiencing? Am I experiencing pain of distress? Or am I feeling great happiness? So he was thinking, I had so long been the practice I had so long been following would lead me to happiness or cast me into an ocean of distress. I couldn't tell whether I was living in the flames of a forest fire or in the supreme nectar of the clear, cool waters of Sri Yamuna. Sometimes I thought I had fallen into the hands of some great deceiver. I was always submerged in a vast ocean of misery. Not even a drop of happiness ever touched me. In such a way I lived in this grove. He's talking to Mathura. I was right here. This is how I lived in this grove. This most attractive ornament of Vrindavan. And one day, while immersed in an ocean of weeping, I fell unconscious. Then the crest jewel of all who are merciful appeared before me. With his own lotus hand, a hand cool like nectar, and always pleased to hold his flute, he wiped dust from my limbs. It wasn't easy, but that greatest of cheats playfully stirred me back to consciousness by filling my nostrils with his unique fragrance, which I had never known before. I was experiencing this fragrance for the first time. Then seeing his lotus face, I quickly stood up, not knowing what I was doing. My heart, filling with joy, tried to catch hold of his splendid yellow cloth. That best of the clever blew his flute in an extraordinarily playful way and escaped me. Suddenly he stepped into a grove, and alas, though I ran about looking, I couldn't find him. He had disappeared. Unable to see him, I fainted and fell into the swift current of the Yamuna, and as it forcefully carried me away, I seemed to regain normal awareness and looked around. I saw myself being transported to another place, along some wonderful path by a flying vehicle faster than the mind and higher than anyone could imagine. Collecting my wits, I was amazed to see I was passing through Vaikuntha Loka and going beyond. I watched with great delight as I passed Ayodhya and other realms. I arrived at the shining world above all others, Sri Goloka, which I had long aspired to reach. Everything there appeared the same as in this divine Mathura Mandala of the material world. In that original land of Mathura, I visited Mathura city. I was surprised and happy to see that it resembled the Mathura here on earth. In that Mathura, I heard that Kamsa had taken it upon himself to arrest his father and Krishna's parents, Devaki and Vasudeva, and was ruling the kingdom. Out of fear of Kamsa, whose family and friends were enemies of the Devatas, Yadavas dared not enjoy themselves freely. And then he describes that because of him, they constantly suffered all sorts of affliction. I too was afraid of Kamsa. So as soon as I finished bathing at Vishranti Ghat, I hurriedly left Mathura and went to glorious Vrindavan. Of course, as described, when he went to Vrindavan, Mathura was his last stop. Then he saw Krishna, saw his face, smelled the fragrance of his body, began running after him. Krishna disappeared, fell in the Yamuna. Of course, we hear nothing about Gopakumar's giving up his body. He fell in the Yamuna, and the next thing you know, here he was in Mathura. And then when he was in Mathura, and that which he just described, then he began looking at all the different people, and he saw that they were experiencing something that he didn't see anywhere else. And he wanted to know where he was. So he stopped to ask everybody, can you tell me, who's the king here? And nobody would answer because everybody was because they were feeling separation. Why? Because Krishna was out on the pasturing grounds. He was herding the cows. And they were all waiting for him to come back. There's different types of separation. Separation when Krishna goes for a distance. And another type of pravas when Krishna goes out to the pasturing grounds during the day. When Mother Jasoda, the cowherd boys, the gopis, they're feeling separation. The cowherd boys are even feeling separation sometimes even when Krishna stands behind a tree momentarily, even for that moment when he's out of their vision, they feel separation from him. But he saw that everyone was experiencing something that he didn't see before, and he was asking everybody, who's the king? And nobody would tell him. Finally he found some elderly man and said, oh, the king here? King here is Nanda Maharaj. And when he heard Nanda Maharaj, then Gopakumara felt in a swoon of ecstasy because he understood where he was. And the man who saw him faint, he wiped him and brought him back. And then Gopakumara understood that means that Krishna, this must be Krishna's place. So he went farther and he went to the gate where all the other persons were waiting. And looking off in the distance, they saw some cloud of dust appearing before him. And this cloud of dust, when they saw Krishna was gradually approaching with all his cowherd boyfriends and all the calves coming in from the pasturing ground. And as he was surrounded by his boyfriends, then Krishna was playing his flute. And while he was playing his flute, everything he saw began manifesting. He saw the Yamuna stood still. He saw the sap of the trees. They were flowing. He saw the cows. Their ears were like, what are they called? Huh? Vessels. Yes, vessels wanting to hear the sound of Krishna's flute. So everybody intensely. And then even the birds flying overhead, everyone was experiencing the intensity of the sound of Krishna's flute. And then as Krishna began approaching, then Krishna, he moved forward ahead of the cowherd boys. And then Gopakumara was trying to wonder, where's Krishna going? Krishna was coming to greet Gopakumara, who he had been waiting for so long, embraced him. Gopakumara was immediately, when Krishna came forward and said, this is my friend Sarup. I've been waiting so long for Sarup. He's always been meditating on me. And Sarup fell down unconscious. And then what happened to Krishna? Krishna also fell down unconscious. He lost external consciousness. And then everyone began to wondering, who is this coward boy? We've never seen him before. Is he some kind of a demon that was sent here? The gopis were thinking maybe Kamsa sent him here to put Krishna in distress, and they began wondering who he was. But this is the fruit. This is the fruit of Gopakumara's pilgrimage. It was the fruit, although it took a long time. It took the visit of a lot of places. It took the blessings of the spiritual master, the instructions of his instructing spiritual masters. It took the mercy of the Lord, both within his heart and externally as the Supreme Lord, whom he personally met in his journey, to get the fruit of his meditation. Gopal, Manam Gopal. So, just as Vidura, in the course of his travels, everywhere he went, he saw Krishna. He was a pilgrim on pilgrimage. He saw his Ishtadev. So in the same way, Gopakumara got the fulfillment of his meditation. It was a little bit of a longer pilgrimage, but nonetheless, it was fruitful. And he was actually able to obtain the Lord of his heart and embraced and accepted in his eternal service as Sarupa. I've gone a little bit over time. I was told I have to stop at 9 o'clock. I thank you all very much for tolerating my... I'll tell you truthfully, this is the first class I've given in straight English. I can't remember the last time I gave a class in straight English. So if I was talking fast, it's because I was trying to keep up with my mind. because usually I get an opportunity to meditate between each sentence that I speak. So, thank you for tolerating me. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Now, I was told at 9 o'clock there's a festival at the Goshala, and there'll be a class on Gopastami. Hare Krishna.